I still remember the day my husband, Marcus, first suggested we invite his mother, Irene, to live with us. It was right after my latest set of extended training rotations, which had left me exhausted and longing for some sense of home. At the time, I was stationed at Fort Draven, a sprawling base known for its rigorous field operations. Despite the intense schedule and the physical toll, I had always maintained a fierce pride in my service to our country. I believed I could balance my responsibilities as a soldier with my duties as a mother to our 2 children, Amelia and Theo. But I never realized how quickly everything could unravel when someone else started pulling the strings from within my own home. When Irene first walked through our front door, she seemed like an angel in disguise. She cooed over Amelia's braids, praising her for how tall she was getting, and swept Theo up in her arms as he giggled happily. She told me not to worry about a single thing. She would cook, clean, do the laundry, and prepare the kids for school. In theory, it was the perfect arrangement. I could come back from base, shower, eat a hot meal, and spend precious moments with my children before bedtime. It felt like a blessing. I recall that initial sense of relief whenever I turned the key to our home and realized I didn't have to scramble to get dinner on the table or manage the chaos alone. For the first few weeks, it was everything I dreamed. But slowly, signs of trouble emerged. Odd comments from the kids began filtering through my daily interactions. One evening, Amelia said, "Grandma says you're never around, Mommy." I was taken aback. I asked my daughter what she meant, and she shrugged. "Grandma said you're always off playing soldier games, and that you leave all the real work to Daddy." She said it so innocently, as though merely repeating a fact she'd learned in class. I tried to brush it off, focusing instead on giving the kids a great weekend. That Saturday, I took them out to a local park for a picnic. We played catch and kicked around a soccer ball. Irene stayed behind, citing fatigue. When we returned, she stood in the kitchen wearing her apron, stirring a pot of soup. She seemed cheerful enough, asking if we enjoyed the outing. I saw no hint of malice in her eyes. Maybe I had misunderstood Amelia's comment. Maybe it was just a child's misunderstanding. But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and it was growing fast. Over the next few weeks, the small remarks snowballed into something more insidious. Theo asked me why I cared more about my uniform than about story time. Amelia asked if I loved the army more than I loved her. It made my heart ache. Their words always circled back to Grandma's perspective. They repeated observations that were clearly from Irene. How I shouldn't miss bedtime so often, how I was never around for dinner, how my husband was shouldering all the household burdens. Sometimes, the accusations were downright lies. Marcus had never once complained about me missing dinner. He recognized the constraints of my job. But now, even he started to hint that perhaps I needed to reevaluate my priorities. At first, Marcus tried to sound supportive. "Kara," he said, using my name in a tone that was gentler than usual, "I know how much you love serving, but you've got a family too. Maybe it's time to consider something less intense. We could use you around the house a bit more." I bristled. "Marcus, I fought tooth and nail to earn my rank and position. I went through multiple deployments while pregnant with Theo, and I've never once faltered in my responsibilities at home. Why are you suddenly suggesting I give that up?" My husband let out a sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because things are changing. The kids miss you. And, I don't know, Mom keeps bringing it up. She's only trying to help." I felt my spine stiffen as anger rose in me. "Is she?" I said quietly, not trusting my voice to hold steady. "Is she really just trying to help?" As weeks turned to months, I grew convinced Irene was orchestrating a campaign against me. She had the entire household routine under her control. She often scheduled my children's extracurricular activities during times she knew I'd be on duty. The result was that I missed out on important milestones, like Theo's first soccer practice or Amelia's dress rehearsal for her ballet recital. And each time I expressed disappointment at missing an event, Irene would sweetly remind me, "No worries. I was there." The kids were happy to see someone cheering for them. There was always a gentle barb underlying her words, an echo of condemnation that I had once again failed to be present. I tried discussing the situation with Marcus in depth. He would shift uncomfortably, torn between supporting me and placating his mother. "She's doing a lot of good here," he insisted. "The kids are happier, the house is cleaner, and you've had fewer daily tasks to worry about. We're saving on daycare costs, too. He paused, then said something that cut me deeply. If it wasn't for her, we'd be worse off. I felt betrayal lodge in my throat. I'm the children's mother, Marcus. I'm supposed to be the one guiding them, not your mother. She's telling them things that make me look bad. She's meddling in our marriage. Doesn't that bother you at all? He shrugged. She's my mother. She cares about us. I'd rather we all just get along. But how could I just get along when she was systematically undercutting my position, my authority, and my self-worth? As the tension escalated, it started affecting my performance at work. My commanding officer, Lieutenant Warner, noticed I was distracted. During morning drills, he would catch me staring into space. Once, I forgot to secure a piece of equipment properly, something I would never have done before. Concerned, he pulled me aside. Sergeant Parker, is everything okay at home? I nearly broke down then and there. Struggling to maintain composure, I just replied, family stuff, sir. I'm trying to work it out. He studied me for a moment and nodded. We need you sharp, but I get it. If you need some time, you can talk to behavioral health or me. Don't let this fester. I nodded, my eyes downcast. I'll handle it, sir. Back home, the atmosphere grew even thicker. Irene was skilled at making everything look pristine and welcoming. She had fresh flowers in a vase on the dining table, dinner ready on time, the floors immaculate. But behind the scenes, she was feeding my children a steady diet of narratives that painted me as an absentee mother, too enamored with the army to care about them. The kids, too young to understand the nuances, started to echo her sentiments. Then, everything came to a head one day after I returned from a challenging field exercise. My uniform was caked with dust, and all I wanted was a long shower. I stepped through the front door, calling out, "Mommy's home," expecting the usual excited shrieks, or at least a mild greeting. The house was oddly silent. I found Irene standing at the sink, calmly washing dishes. She didn't look at me as she said, "They're upstairs, reading with their father." Something in her tone put me on edge. I climbed the stairs and found Marcus and the kids in Amelia's bedroom. They were reading a picture book. Marcus looked up with a somber expression. "We need to talk," he said softly. The kids glanced between us, uncertain. I gave them a quick smile. "Guys, can you give me and Daddy a minute?" They scampered out, leaving me, in my dusty uniform, standing opposite my husband. He shut the door and took a seat on the bed. "Theo told me that Grandma said you left because you're tired of them. He asked if you were planning to run away." I felt my pulse spike. "That's absurd. You know me better than that. I would never." He held up his hand. "I know, but the kids are confused, Kara. They see you gone all the time, and they're starting to believe Grandma's stories that you're neglecting them. I think," his voice tightened, "I think maybe it's time you leave the army. Or at least take an indefinite leave. We can't keep doing this. The kids are growing up without you." My mind whirled. It was an ultimatum, one I never thought I'd hear from my husband. The betrayal that flooded my heart was unimaginable. I realized in that moment that the mother-in-law who was supposedly helping had succeeded in planting her seeds of doubt, enough to make Marcus question my dedication to our family. It was a direct blow to everything I believed in, everything I had worked for. I stormed out of the room, not trusting myself to continue that conversation without exploding. Downstairs, Irene was waiting. She dried her hands on a towel and offered me a sugar-sweet smile. "Everything all right, dear?" I didn't respond. I dashed into the bathroom and locked the door behind me, tears streaming down my face. My entire world was unraveling because of the manipulations of a woman who claimed she only wanted to help. Days passed in a blur. I went to work, but I felt like a ghost. The spark I had once felt, the fiery passion for my duties, was overshadowed by the war brewing at home. I tried talking to my children, explaining why Mommy had to be at the base. I told them about the importance of duty, sacrifice, and service. But they were so young. To them, it might have just sounded like empty promises. Grandma was there every day, cooking their meals, helping them with homework, tucking them into bed. Mommy was a stranger who breezed in and out, wearing a uniform that took her far away. My heart ached each time I had to leave, each time I saw Irene's smug expression as she assured me, "Don't worry, I'll take care of them while you're off saving the world." One evening, I came back to find my children huddled at the kitchen table, coloring. They barely looked up when I greeted them. My mother-in-law stepped up behind them, touching Amelia's shoulder lightly and whispering something I couldn't catch. Amelia offered a small nod, then spoke aloud. "Mommy, can Grandma read us a story tonight instead of you?" It stung. I'd waited all day to come home and spend time with my kids, only to be cast aside. "Sure," I said weakly, forcing a smile. It felt like I was losing them. I retreated to my bedroom, where Marcus was lying on the bed, phone in hand. He glanced up, gave me a tight-lipped smile, and returned to scrolling through whatever was on the screen. I sat down heavily, removing my boots. My mind buzzed with pent-up frustrations. "Marcus, we need to talk." He set his phone aside. "I know." So we talked. We argued. We rehashed the same points over and over: my job, my responsibilities, his mother's influence. But nothing felt resolved. Eventually, it boiled down to one question he kept repeating. "Would you ever consider walking away from the army for us?" I had never considered it. My heart screamed no, but my mind was muddled with guilt and confusion. If my children truly believed I was neglecting them, maybe I had to do something drastic to make it right. I hated feeling backed into a corner like this. Irene seemed to sense our discord and seized every opportunity to widen the gap. She'd whisper to Marcus, referencing her old-school beliefs about a mother's role, or approach me with patronizing suggestions like, perhaps a desk job would be more suitable for a mother, as though my uniform offended her very existence. The final straw came on a crisp Sunday morning. I woke up early, hoping to cook breakfast for my family and spend quality time together. To my surprise, Irene was already in the kitchen. She had set the table, bacon and eggs sizzling on the stove. "Up bright and early, Kara?" she asked, voice honeyed. "I wasn't sure if you'd join us, since you're usually too tired after your army duties." I clenched my jaw, ignoring her barb. I wanted to make the kids something. "But you're already on it, I see." She offered a shrug, an innocent tilt of her head that made me want to scream. "I just thought you needed your rest. After all, the children need me. The children need their mother." I shot back, trying to keep my tone level. "And I'm their mother. I'm perfectly capable of cooking breakfast or spending time with them." Irene's face was a mask of kindness. "Of course you can. I'm not saying you can't. I'm only making observations. You're so often away." My temper flared. "I'm away because I'm working. I'm serving. That doesn't mean I'm not present in my children's lives. But you've been telling them otherwise, haven't you? You've been feeding them the idea that I care more about my rank than I do about them." She didn't deny it. Instead, she gave a gracious little smile that made my blood run cold. "I won't lie to them. Children deserve honesty." In that moment, it took everything in me not to lash out. My heart pounded, and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. Irene had laid her hand of cards on the table. She wasn't even trying to hide her intentions anymore. She was brazenly usurping my role, systematically cutting me out. The scariest part was I didn't know how to stop her without creating a massive family feud, one that might destroy my marriage or traumatize my children. So I bit my tongue, counted to 10, and stepped out of the kitchen to compose myself. After breakfast, which I barely touched, I pulled on a light jacket and told the family I was going out for a walk. Marcus said nothing. Irene merely nodded and offered a sweet, "Don't stay out too long." The kids were glued to the TV, watching cartoons. It felt like no one even cared if I stayed or went. Walking down our quiet suburban street, I replayed the last few months in my head. How had it come to this? How had I allowed my mother-in-law to dismantle my life from the inside out? I was angry, heartbroken, and desperate, but I was also a soldier. I was trained to overcome obstacles, to strategize and outmaneuver opponents. If Irene wanted to wage war in my own home, then I would have to fight back. Yet I didn't want my children to suffer, nor did I want to endanger my marriage. I needed a plan that would expose Irene's manipulations without hurting the very people I loved. And so I began my slow, determined path toward a measured revenge, a way to reclaim my role as a mother and soldier, and to restore my family to harmony. When I got back from my walk, I found Irene in the living room, flipping through a parenting magazine. The children and Marcus were nowhere in sight. She glanced up and said, "The kids and Marcus went to the store. I suggested they pick out some new shoes for Theo. His old ones are looking worn." I nodded, trying to sound casual. That's thoughtful of you. Her eyes flicked across my face, trying to read me. I offered no real expression, acting more subdued than usual. I'd made a decision on that walk. If I wanted to beat her at her own game, I needed to act. I needed to gather evidence of her manipulations, to show Marcus, and maybe even the kids, how she was distorting reality. The best place to start was to document everything. So I forced a smile and said, "You've been so helpful. I realize how much you do around here." "Thank you." Irene's surprise was palpable. She raised her eyebrows slightly, as though not expecting such an admission from me. Then she laughed softly. "Well, I'm happy to do it. The children need someone who's always there." I swallowed my annoyance. "Right. Anyway, I'm thinking of reorganizing the kids' schedules to see if maybe I can make it to more events. Maybe you can help me figure out a better plan." She regarded me with caution. "Of course, dear. Anything for the children." That was how I laid the first brick of my plan. If Irene thought I was bending to her worldview, she would be less guarded. She'd continue her sabotage, but now I'd be watching closely, documenting any hints of her manipulations. Over the next few weeks, I put on an act. I engaged her in friendly discussions about the children's day-to-day routines. I let her see me struggle with balancing duty schedules. "I just feel so guilty," I would say, sighing dramatically. "I want to be a good mother, but I also love being a soldier." Irene would pounce on those insecurities, feeding me lines like, "Perhaps a mother can't truly be both. Children need their mom around every day." Or, "Yes, the army might be a noble profession, but your children need you too. You can't do this forever, you know." Instead of arguing, I nodded, feigning agreement, all while discreetly recording these conversations on my phone. I hated resorting to such tactics, but I felt cornered. If I wanted to protect my family from her toxic influence, I needed proof of her manipulative nature. Otherwise, Marcus would continue to dismiss my concerns as paranoia, and the children would remain under her spell. Meanwhile, I tried to shore up my relationship with the kids. I'd read them bedtime stories on nights I was home early. I'd make them pancakes in funny shapes on weekend mornings. If Irene hovered nearby, I'd invite her to join, never giving her reason to feel excluded. The kids were delighted to have both Mommy and Grandma paying attention to them, but I could see confusion in their eyes. They were torn between the affectionate mother who tried so hard and the grandmother who'd been so consistent in my absence. The payoff for my strategy came one evening when we were all in the living room, playing a board game. Theo had just rolled the dice when Irene blurted, "You know, Kara, I was talking to the kids earlier, and they seemed worried about your next deployment. You really should consider stopping your service. It's clearly scaring them." I forced a concerned expression. "They told you they're scared?" She nodded fervently, turning to Theo. "Didn't you say you were scared of Mommy leaving again?" Theo glanced up, uncertain. "I said I miss Mommy when she's gone." "But Grandma said—" He hesitated, shooting a quick look at me. "Grandma said soldiers sometimes don't come home. That's why we need to spend more time with you now." My heart shattered, hearing my 6-year-old voice that terrible worry. At the same time, I felt a surge of anger toward Irene. She had planted that fear in my son's mind, all to push her agenda that I should quit the army. I looked at Marcus, hoping he'd see the cruelty in his mother's tactics. He appeared troubled but remained silent. I took a slow breath. "Theo, sweetheart, I promise you that I always do everything in my power to come home safely. I love you and Amelia more than anything. That's why I serve, to keep you safe, to keep our country safe. You remember the stories I told you about helping people, right?" He nodded, his eyes wide, a child caught in the crossfire of adult disagreements. "Yes, but I don't want you to get hurt." I reached over and hugged him. "I won't let that happen. I train very hard to stay safe, and I will always come home to you, okay?" Theo nodded again, and I felt Irene's gaze burning into the side of my face. She wanted me to come off as insensitive or reckless, but I had deflected her attempt. We finished the board game with 4 smiles, each of us playing our part. But I could feel the tension heavy in the air. That night, after everyone went to bed, I uploaded all the recorded conversations to a secure folder on my laptop. As I listened to them, I felt a pang of guilt. This was my family. Yet here I was, amassing evidence against my own mother-in-law, like I was building a case file against an enemy agent. But I reminded myself as she was destroying my family from within. She was slowly alienating my children, eroding my marriage, and trying to force me to give up my life's calling. To fight back, I needed allies. My first ally would have to be Marcus, if I could open his eyes to the manipulative undercurrent. Late that night, I quietly shook him awake. He grunted, half asleep. "What is it, Kara?" I hesitated, the weight of this betrayal heavy on my chest. "I need you to listen to something." He squinted. "Now." "It's like 2 a.m. I nodded, determined. "Yes. Now." We moved to the living room, where I played a few choice clips I'd recorded. Irene telling me a mother's duty is at home, that the children are better off without me. Irene whispering to Theo that soldiers often don't come back. Irene bragging about how she convinced Amelia that Mommy was too busy chasing ranks. In the hush of night, those words took on a sinister quality. Marcus looked stunned, pausing the recording occasionally, mouth set in a thin line. When the final clip ended, he exhaled shakily. I had no idea. I felt tears welling up, along with an undercurrent of anger. "That's the problem. You didn't want to see it. You kept thinking your mother was just helping. She's not just helping, Marcus. She's systematically destroying our family." He buried his head in his hands. "How did we get here?" I wanted to snap, because you let her, but I held back. Instead, I put a hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, I get that she's your mother, and you love her. But this is our marriage, our children, our life. She doesn't get to decide that I quit the army, or that I'm an unfit mother." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, "You're right. I see it now. I'm sorry I didn't believe you earlier. I just thought you were stressed. Mom's always been strong-willed, but I never imagined she'd do something so manipulative." I let out a long breath. "So what do we do?" "I'll talk to her," Marcus said. "She can't stay here if she's going to keep this up." I nodded. "I agree." The next morning, I left early for PT, my heart pounding with anticipation. I knew Marcus planned to confront Irene. I wondered how that conversation would go. Would she deny everything? Would she turn it around on me? I wasn't sure what to expect. When I returned, the house was tense and quiet. Marcus was sitting on the couch, his hands clasped. Irene stood near the kitchen, her arms folded. The kids were in their rooms, likely sensing the charged atmosphere. When I entered, Irene glared at me, then turned back to Marcus. "You believe her over me? How dare you suspect your own mother?" Marcus sighed, looking weary. "Mom, I don't just suspect you. I heard the recordings. This isn't hearsay. You've been saying terrible things about Kara, about her service. You've been scaring the kids. You're the one who's made them think their mother doesn't care." Irene's face flushed. "I was only telling them the truth. She's gone all the time. She's putting her life at risk. Don't you realize the damage this does to the children? They're petrified they'll lose her, and you're letting it continue." I stepped forward. "I've never hidden the risks for my family. But there's a difference between teaching them about sacrifice and actively undermining their mother. You told them I might never come back. You told them I don't love them as much as the army. That's not being helpful. That's not protecting them." She sneered. "You have no idea what it's like to raise a family. You think your army career is more important. These children will resent you for not being there." I felt my blood boil. "My children will respect me for standing up for what's right, for defending this country, and for loving them fiercely. They will not resent me, not if I can help it, and certainly not because of your whispers." Marcus got up, placing himself between us. "Mom, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here if you're going to keep driving us apart. I love you, but this ends now. I want you to start packing." Irene's lips tightened, her eyes gleaming with rage. For a moment, I thought she might explode, but then she grabbed her purse with a huff. "Fine. If that's what you want, I'll leave. But don't come crying to me when she goes off on deployment and leaves you and the kids behind." I opened my mouth to retort, but Marcus just shook his head. "Mom, please, just go. I'll figure things out from here." She stormed upstairs, presumably to pack. Marcus turned to me, looking deflated. "I'm sorry. She won't accept responsibility. She'll just blame you." I touched his arm gently. "I know, but I also know we can fix this. We have to. For the kids." An hour later, Irene left in a taxi, refusing any gesture of help. The children were confused, asking why Grandma was leaving so suddenly. We tried to explain as gently as possible that Grandma needed a break, that sometimes adults don't see eye to eye. Theo cried, and Amelia was sullen, so we spent the rest of the day comforting them. In the weeks that followed, tension lingered like a stale odor, a reminder that a storm had passed but not entirely cleared. Marcus and I worked to rebuild trust, not only between ourselves but with the kids. I focused on spending my free time with them, helping Amelia practice her ballet routines, cheering Theo on at soccer, reading bedtime stories every chance I got. Slowly, I saw the light return to their eyes. They began to relax, unburdened by Grandma's ominous predictions. They stopped repeating lines like, "Mommy cares more about the army." Marcus apologized over and over. He felt terrible for doubting me. I, in turn, apologized for not coming forward with evidence sooner, for allowing resentment to simmer. We promised each other we'd communicate better moving forward. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was a hopeful start. Meanwhile, I couldn't erase Irene's poison overnight. There were still moments when Amelia would ask tentatively, "Grandma said your job is dangerous. Is it?" And I would kneel down and explain why I do what I do, how I take precautions, and how love motivates my duty. Theo sometimes had nightmares, afraid I wouldn't come home. Those were the hardest to handle. But I held him, reassured him, and told him that I'd always fight to come back to him and his sister. Eventually, my commanding officer granted me a more flexible schedule to ease the family strain. Marcus, seeing the impact, stepped up and made sure we had designated family times that were set in stone. We reconnected as a couple, rediscovering the reasons we loved each other. Despite the scars Irene left, we found a renewed sense of unity. Months later, Irene made a surprise visit. She knocked on the door, standing on our porch with a single suitcase. Marcus opened it, tense. "Mom!" She swallowed, looking more subdued than I'd ever seen her. "I just wanted to see the kids. I'm not here to stay, unless you want me to." "But she paused, glancing around. When she saw me walk up behind Marcus, her gaze dropped. I wanted to apologize. Silence stretched in the hallway. Amelia and Theo peeked from behind the living room doorway, excited to see Grandma, but wary of the tension. Marcus glanced at me, silently asking what I wanted to do. I studied Irene's face. She looked genuinely remorseful, shoulders slumped, eyes brimming with regret. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to protect the peaceful life we'd worked so hard to rebuild. But another part of me recognized that the kids loved their grandmother, that maybe, just maybe, she had come to realize the damage she'd caused. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. "Come in." She followed us inside, her expression a mixture of relief and nervousness. We sat around the dining table, Marcus, me, and Irene, while the kids lingered nearby, unsure if they were welcome in a grown-up conversation. Irene cleared her throat. "I was wrong. I wanted to protect the children, but I took it too far. I thought I was doing what was best, but I see now that I overstepped. I'm sorry." Marcus waited for my cue, letting me lead. I nodded slowly. "I appreciate you saying that. But words aren't enough. You nearly destroyed my relationship with my kids, and with Marcus by undermining me at every turn." She blinked rapidly as though fighting tears. "I know. It's hard for me to watch you risk your life. I lost my husband, your father, Marcus. Remember, it was a tragic accident. I've already lost one person I love. I was terrified of losing you, Kara. I was terrified of my grandchildren growing up without a mother. I let that fear consume me. I thought if I convinced everyone the army was dangerous, you'd quit. I'm sorry." Her confession knocked the wind out of me. I knew Irene was a widow, but I never realized her motivation was rooted in trauma. That didn't excuse her methods, but it lent me a measure of understanding. "I get it," I said softly. "You were afraid, but we all have fears. I don't want my children living in fear. I serve because I believe in protecting families, mine included." Irene pressed her lips together, nodding. "I see that now." Marcus reached out and covered his mother's hand with his own. "Mom, we love you. The kids love you. But if you can't respect Kara's choices, if you undermine her again, we can't have you around." Irene swallowed and whispered, "I understand. I'll do better." Amelia and Theo, having eavesdropped enough, scampered over, hugging their grandmother. "Grandma, don't leave again, okay?" Amelia pleaded, her voice trembling. I saw Irene's eyes well up. "I won't, if your mommy and daddy will have me." I looked at Marcus. We shared a silent understanding. Second chances are hard to come by, but for the sake of family, sometimes they're necessary. "You can stay for a short visit," I said carefully. "But let's set some boundaries." Irene agreed. We wrote out clear guidelines, including that she never discuss my service in a negative or fearful way with the kids. If she had concerns, she was to come to me or Marcus privately. Over time, she began to respect those boundaries. She apologized to the children for scaring them. We offered small moments of forgiveness, bit by bit. Slowly, as the weeks turned to months, I saw glimpses of a new family dynamic forming. Irene still struggled with the idea of me being a soldier, but she channeled her anxiety in healthier ways, offering to help schedule counseling for the kids if needed, sending me care packages whenever I had overnight field exercises, and working to be transparent about her fears rather than using manipulative tactics. The real turning point came when I was recognized at a base ceremony for my excellent leadership during a field training exercise. Families were invited to attend. I wasn't sure if Irene would come, but she did, standing in the audience with Marcus, Amelia, and Theo. She watched as I received my commendation. Afterward, she came up to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Kara," she said, voice trembling. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say that." Her words melted a piece of my heart that I didn't realize was still frozen. I embraced her, letting go of the bitterness. This was the mother-in-law I'd hoped for, the supportive grandmother who didn't see my service as a threat. Maybe we would never be best friends, but the tension and sabotage were finally behind us. Looking back on this period, I still feel a pang of betrayal, a memory of how close I came to losing the family I cherished. Irene's campaign had nearly convinced my kids I was unfit to be their mother. She'd almost persuaded my husband to push me into resigning from the career I'd dedicated my life to. But in the end, I found my footing. I gathered the evidence, confronted her, and reclaimed my role as mother and soldier. I would love to say I orchestrated a grand, vindictive scheme that left my mother-in-law utterly humiliated. But revenge in a family setting is seldom so black and white. Instead, the real triumph was restoring harmony and respect in my home, ensuring my children understood that I love them more than anything, and that my service is part of that love, not a detraction from it. My victory was subtle but powerful. I showed everyone, including Irene, that I could be a soldier and a loving mother at the same time. Today, my relationship with Irene is cautious but kind. She visits occasionally, and we maintain open communication about expectations. She's more self-aware now, having realized the damage that manipulative fear-mongering can do. My children are thriving, and Marcus and I are closer than ever. We overcame a storm of lies and mistrust because we chose to confront it together. Not long ago, I overheard Theo telling one of his friends, "My mom's a soldier. She's super cool, and she keeps us safe." That single sentence erased a million doubts. No matter what Irene did in the past, the truth stood firm in my son's eyes. I was his hero, not the absentee parent grandma who tried to paint me as. That realization was the happiest ending I could ask for. Despite all the drama and the pain, we ended up stronger. Our family had been tested and had come out intact, and I continued to wear my uniform with pride, knowing that at home, I was still the mother my children needed in life. And that was how I found my revenge, in the best way possible, by reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my family's faith in me, without having to destroy anyone in the process. Instead, I salvaged what could be saved, forging a new path toward understanding and acceptance. In the end, the mother-in-law who moved in to help almost tore us apart, but we came out of it united, standing on firm ground. My kids respect and love me. My husband supports my career, and Irene, while not entirely changed, is at least aware that I won't be undermined again. For that, I'm grateful, and I can finally breathe freely in my own home, confident that I've not only won this battle but set us all on a better path for the future.